All right, welcome to the deep dive. You brought us some really intriguing stuff today. These are excerpts from Eckhart Tolle's, very well-known book, The Power of Now.
That's right. Hugely influential.
So our goal here, as always, is to really get into these sources, pull out the main ideas, the key insights, really, so you can get a solid grasp of what this book is all about and, why it's had such an impact.
Exactly. And it definitely challenges how we usually think about, ourselves, our minds, time, suffering even. It's a different lens.
A very different lens.
Yeah.
It invites you to look at things you thought you knew, but maybe from a totally new angle.
It really does.
Okay, so let's dive in. Where does he start? Because the origin story in the source is pretty dramatic.
It really is. He talks about this period of intense depression, really deep unhappiness, and it leads to this thought popping into his head, I cannot live with myself any longer.
Wow. Okay.
And then the crucial bit, he suddenly sees the strangeness of that thought. Like, hang on, if I cannot live with myself, are there two of me here?
The I and the self.
Exactly. The I and the self that I cannot live with. And that sparks the fundamental question, which one is real? Me or this self I can't stand? That split is sort of the entry point.
And that leads straight into what feels like the absolute core message. You are not your mind.
Yeah. He states it pretty bluntly. Identifying with your mind, thinking that is you, is the greatest obstacle to enlightenment, as he puts it. Enlightenment meaning, waking up to who you really are beyond that stream of thinking.
So what is this mind that we're apparently not? He describes the unobserved mind.
He does, and it's not a flattering picture. Repetitive thoughts, useless thoughts, often negative, sometimes really harmful, just churning away.
Like background static.
Kind of, but worse. He calls it a serious leakage of vital energy, like it's draining you constantly.
Which leads to that very direct question he poses.
The off-button question,
Okay.
Yeah. Can you be free of your mind whenever you want to? Have you found the off button?
And for most of us, let's be honest, probably not.
Probably not. And if you can't switch it off, if it's just running, then maybe it's running you, especially when you're not fully present, not fully conscious.
This is where the ego comes in then.
Precisely. He defines the ego as this false mind-made self. It's the identity constructed by the thinking mind.
A false self. That sounds significant.
It is. And he argues that because it's, fundamentally unreal, a phantom nature, he calls it, it feels perpetually vulnerable, insecure, always under threat.
Makes sense. If your foundation isn't solid.
Right. So how does it cope? How does this insecure, mind-made self try to prop itself up?
Okay.
By identifying with things, external things, possessions, your job titles, social status, physical appearance, relationships, your belief system, your personal story.
Anything outside itself.
Exactly. It needs to latch onto these forms to create and maintain its illusory sense of self. And crucially, he says these needs are bottomless, endless. The ego is never satisfied, never truly secure.
And this constant feeling of being vulnerable, of needing more, needing to defend, that connects to fear.
Directly. He suggests the ego is constantly sending this subtle or not so subtle message to the body. Danger, I am under threat. And the body's response, fear.
So fear becomes this kind of baseline state for people identified with their mind.
Often, yes. It might not always be panic. It could be just a low-level anxiety, unease, dread, a kind of background hum of insecurity. But it stems from that fundamental insecurity of the egoic self.
Okay, so the mind and the ego are generating this stuff. Problems, fear. Where does all the accumulated emotional residue go? This brings us to the pain body concept.
Yeah, the pain body, he describes it as this energy field within you made up of old, unresolved emotional pain, past hurts, grief, anger, trauma.
Yeah.
It's the energy of that pain lingering.
And it's not just sitting there passively.
Definitely not. It has a kind of drive, a need to survive, and it survives by feeding.
Feeding on what?
On experiences that resonate with its own frequency. It actually seeks out and creates situations that generate more pain, anger, destructiveness, hatred, grief, emotional drama, violence, and even illness, he lists.
So it wants more pain.
Essentially, yes. When it gets activated, triggered by something, it can literally take over your thinking and behavior. You become the pain body, unconsciously acting out its patterns, just so it can feed on the resulting negativity.
Like a cycle. Pain feeding on pain.
That's the line. Pain can only feed on pain. Joy, peace, presence. These are indigestible to it, he says.
And this ties back to the present moment, doesn't it? He says the pain we create now
is always some form of non-acceptance, some unconscious resistance to what is.
Resistance? How did that show up?
On the thought level, it's judgment. criticizing reality, complaining. On the emotional level, it's negativity, annoyance, anger, sadness. The more identified you are with your mind, which is where judgment and resistance live, the more you suffer, the more you feed that pain body.
Okay, this pain body sounds pretty formidable. How are you supposed to deal with it?
Yeah.
Your first instinct might be to fight it, right? Push it away.
And that's exactly what doesn't work, according to Tolle. Fighting it, trying to suppress it, just creates more conflict, more resistance, more pain. It strengthens it.
Okay. What?
The key is consciousness, awareness.
Watching it, even when it feels awful. It sounds hard.
It is counterintuitive, definitely. But he says watching it is enough. This means bringing your conscious attention to the feeling itself in your body, not getting lost in the thoughts about the feeling, but just observing the raw sensation.
And this observation needs to be accepting.
Yes, accepting it as part of what is at that moment. You're not condoning the pain, but you're allowing it to be there, witnessed. You bring your presence, your non-judgmental awareness, the flame of your consciousness, he calls it, to the pain.
And that presence is what changes things.
That's the idea. By witnessing it, you stop being identified with it. You realize you are the awareness observing the pain, not the pain itself. And that awareness, that presence, is what has the power to transmute the painful energy. It dissolves it.
This focus on awareness and the present moment brings us to another huge theme. Time. Or rather, the delusion of time.
Right. He makes a really important distinction. There's clock time, which is practical, meeting deadlines, catching trains, necessary stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then there's psychological time. And this is where the problem lies. This is living mentally in the past, guilt, resentment, regret, or living mentally in the future, anxiety, worry, stress, anticipation.
Always somewhere else mentally.
Exactly. And this relates to his distinction between your life situation and your life.
Okay, explain that.
Your life situation is all the stuff in your mind. Your history, your problems, your goals, your circumstances.
Yeah.
It exists in psychological time. It's mind stuff, he says, and usually feels full of problems.
But my life.
Your actual life is always right now. It is this present moment. It's real, tangible, not a mental concept.
Which leads to that core statement.
Nothing exists outside the now. Repeated over and over. The now isn't just a moment passing. It's the access point. The key to the spiritual dimension, the narrow gate that leads to life.
He really tries to make you feel this with that question he poses. Yeah. Forget about your life situation for a while and pay attention to your life, your actual present existence. Find out if you have any problem at this moment, not tomorrow or in 10 minutes, but now. Do you have a problem now?
And usually, right now, in the split second of now, maybe not. The problem is often a thought about past or future.
Precisely. That's what the question aims to reveal. He says, all negativity is caused by an accumulation of psychological time and denial of the present. Believing you need more time to get somewhere better, to find salvation or peace. He calls that a core delusion, maybe the greatest obstacle.
So if psychological time is the trap and the now is the answer, how do we, get there? How do we access the power of the now?
Well, the main way circles back to what we talked about with the pain body. Observing your mind. Watching the thoughts without getting swept away by them.
How does watching thoughts help access the now?
Because it withdraws energy from the mind. The energy that was feeding the endless, often useless thinking gets freed up. And that freed up energy becomes or reveals presence, your conscious awareness anchored in the now.
So enlightenment, in his terms, isn't about stopping thought altogether.
No, not becoming like a vegetable, as he says. It's rising above thought, being able to use the thinking mind skillfully when you need it for planning, creating, solving problems, but being free from the constant involuntary internal dialogue, having access to inner quiet, inner stillness.
The creativity, does that come from thought or?
He suggests true creativity involves an oscillation, moving between focused thought and moments of no mind, that state of pure awareness without thought. You dip into the stillness, the source, then bring that insight back into thought and form.
Okay, now he mentions specific ways to get into the state of presence, these portals into the now. One really interesting one is the inner body.
Yes. This feels like a key practical technique he emphasizes. He calls it a somewhat lost teaching. We tend to focus so much on the outer body, the physical form, seeing it as temporary, maybe even denying it.
Right, not the spiritual part.
But he flips that. He says the doorway to your deeper reality, your timeless essence, your being, is actually through the body. Not the outer form, but the subtle energy field within it. Feeling the aliveness inside your hands, your feet, your whole body. That inner energy field is presence. He calls it the only point of access.
So a practical exercise is just Feel your hands right now. Feel the energy inside.
Exactly. He encourages you to feel your inner body as you read or listen. Just bring some attention inwards to the feeling of being alive within the skin. It immediately grounds you in the now and takes attention away from discursive thought.
Can you use that with thinking, like creatively?
Yeah, he suggests that. If you're wrestling with something mentally, you can consciously stop thinking for a moment. Shift your focus fully into the inner body's energy field. Feel the stillness there, and then resume thinking. Often, a new insight arises from that space. It's like learning to think with your whole body, not just your head.
What other portals does he mention? Ways to cut through the mental noise.
Conscious breathing is a big one. Just feeling the sensation of the breath coming in and going out.
Simple but effective.
Very. Also, really looking at nature, a tree, a flower, the sky, without putting mental labels on everything, just perceiving. Or contemplating space, the space in a room, the space between objects. Or silence, listening to the silence underneath sounds.
Why space and silence?
Because they're formless. By putting your attention on them, you withdraw attention from the objects of your mind, your thoughts and emotions. These portals give you access to what he calls the unmanifested.
The unmanifested, what's that?
It's described as the formless source, pure consciousness before it takes any form, the ground of being. Accessing it, even briefly, brings deep stillness and peace, but also, surprisingly, joy and intense aliveness. It's tapping into the source energy itself.
And there's one more, rather, final portal he mentioned?
Yes, the moment of death. He suggests a portal opens then, a potential moment of intense light or bliss. But, he cautions, most people miss it because of remaining fear, resistance, attachments, unless they've practiced accessing that formless dimension, the unmanifested, during their life.
Okay, let's pivot to another absolutely key idea, surrender. This word can trip people up.
For sure. People hear surrender and they think weakness, giving up, defeat, becoming a doormat, resignation.
Fatalism, yeah.
But that's not Tolle's meaning at all. He's very clear about that.
So in this context, what is surrender?
Simply put, acceptance of the now. It means saying yes to this present moment, exactly as it is, internally, aligning yourself with reality rather than fighting it in your mind.
But crucially, he says it's compatible with taking action. How does that work? If you accept the invention, now would you try to change it?
It's about the inner state while you act. Are you acting out of resistance, negativity, frustration with the now? Or are you acting from a place of inner acceptance of what is, even as you take steps to create change?
Yeah.
When your action arises from that place of inner surrender, when your doing is infused with being, he calls it surrendered action. It's not driven by egoic wanting or aversion. It flows more easily, feels more like a joyful celebration of life energy. And paradoxically, this acceptance takes you deeper into the end. Now, even as you act, the quality of your consciousness changes the action and often the outcome.
He gives it huge importance, doesn't he?
Massive. He calls surrender the most important thing you can do to bring about positive change. And even more strongly, no truly positive action can arise out of an unsurrendered state of consciousness. Action born from anger, fear, or resistance just tends to create more of the same, even if the intention seems good.
That perspective really changes how you might approach difficult situations. Those limit situations he talks about.
Right. Really tough stuff. Major illness, loss, disaster, facing death. Things that feel unbearable. He acknowledges they can feel like a descent into hell. Absolutely.
But there's another possibility.
Yes. That these very situations can become catalysts for profound transformation. An alchemical transmutation, he calls it, turning the base metal of pain and suffering into gold.
How? When you feel trapped, when there's no way out.
He says when there's no way out, there is always a way through. And the way through is, again, counterintuitive. Don't turn away from the pain. Face it. Feel it fully.
Feel it, not think about it.
Exactly. Feel it, don't think about it. The key is to put your attention directly on the feeling, the raw sensation in your body. Not on the story your mind is telling about the situation or the feeling, not creating a victim identity. Just pure, intense, alert attention on the feeling itself.
Bring the flame of your consciousness into the darkness.
Yes. Stay